Good morning, and for those who celebrate the holiday, I'd like to wish you a happy Easter. I'm out here in the garage. I have time for a quick video today, and I've kind of fallen behind because I wasn't feeling well, but I am feeling better now. And thank you for all your well wishes. Anyway, I have an FM wireless mic. This is an old piece of equipment here. I don't know how well you can see that, but the owner is the same person who owns the Sansui 9090DB I'm working on. And while I'm waiting for some parts to come in on this, I thought I'd look at this FM wireless mic. He still had the original box. And these take, I believe, obsolete batteries. They're Mercury 1.3 volt button cells. This is probably one of them here. And I'm not sure what the problem is yet. I cranked up the spectrum analyzer, but after giving this a little bit of a shake, I think he's got a few more problems than that. But having the spectrum analyzer turned on, I want to show you how I have it set up and what we're seeing. Okay, so I set up the spectrum analyzer because I wanted to see if this thing was putting out anything. I have my power supply set to put out 1.3 volts. That's when I started shaking and realized we had more of a problem than just possibly a battery issue. But what I have here is I have 2 points set up. I have 88 megahertz here at our start, and our stop is 108 megahertz. And what you're seeing here, here, and here are local FM stations, because this is the FM band in the US, 88 megahertz to about 108 megahertz. It may be 87.5 to 107.5. In any event, this is the range. I was hoping to see that transmitter pop up here and get stronger or weaker the closer I got to the antenna. I have an antenna on the input there, so that's what we're getting. And if I touch the antenna, we get a little more output here, as you can see. Excuse me, just like rabbit ears on TVs back in the old days. In any event, I just wanted to show what this showed. These are all the FM stations I'm picking up in here with this antenna. If I had an outside antenna, I would get many more stations. I do have to get that set back up. When I do, we'll spend a little more time with the spectrum analyzer. But right now, that mic has a lot more problems than I initially thought. So we're going to take a look at that. Okay, so in order to get this out, the label needs to be peeled off. It's a thin metal label. Under here we have a screw, and there's a possibility that it was there was an attempt to made to disassemble this without taking the screw out, and the board inside is cracked and there's something loose going on. So we're going to take the screw out and see if we can get this thing apart. Okay, I've gotten the screw out, and I was going to unsolder all our points here, but that would take quite a bit of heat, and I just don't want to apply it to the board, so I bent the shield out. We're going to have to glue the PCB back on and resolder the traces. And while I have this out, you can see how bent the screw got. I think, like I said, somebody probably tried to get this apart without taking that screw out. And honestly, if they had not done that, I might not have noticed that it didn't want to come out because there was a screw under the label. But anyway, what's done is done. So now we have to see about attaching the PCB for the battery. And finding a battery for this is going to be another issue. I don't know that the one that was in it was good, so let's take a moment and check that out. Okay, so the battery's here, and as you can see, it measures a whopping 14 millivolts. That's not going to do anything for anybody. So we're going to have to see what to power this with, and we're going to have to fix the board. I don't know about getting another battery. I'll have to do a little research, but anyway, that's where this stands right now. Okay, so before I waste any time trying to fix the PCB, I decided to see if this thing works at all. So I have the power supply here, and what we need to do is touch it to the 2 points where it came in to see if we see anything pop up on the screen. And if you look right there, right next to that, we have signal. Let's see if I can put this on so it stays. Yeah. Whenever the camera's on, this always happens. Okay, but you see, as I get the antenna of that closer to here, we have a good signal. Now we're going to go see where that signal is. And according to this, it is at 96.4 megahertz. So let's put our center frequency to 96.4 megahertz, and that should come up right there. I'm not seeing modulation, and I'm a little concerned about that, so there might be something wrong. Is there something? Nope, it does modulate. Check one. Check. Okay, I think this is working. This is not a real-time instrument like an older spectrum analyzer would be. This is a digital, so there's a little bit of lag, latency, whatever you want to call it, but this thing does work. So now what I have to do to fix the board, and I'm going to disconnect the power supply here, is I don't want to unsolder this. Like I said, I don't want to apply that kind of heat, but unfortunately, in order to get this put back together, I need to get this here, and the battery clips are in the way of this, so if I fix this, I'm not going to be able to fold this back under. So what I'm going to do is I am going to unsolder the battery tabs from here, fix the board, bend that back up into shape, and then I'll solder the battery tabs back on. The other thing we have to figure out is what we're going to power this with, because those mercury cells are no longer available, as far as I know. I got to do a little research on that, but at least now we know that the unit works and what the problem with it is. Okay, so in order to remove these solder tabs, I put some fresh solder on here, which is always a good idea, and I just melt it with the iron and the tab lifts right out. Okay, so now we should be able to take the board, and my initial plan is I want to use some super glue to adhere it, and then I'm going to line it with some 2-part epoxy, some JB Weld, and let it cure for a few days and make sure we have a good solid bond before I decide to start putting this back together. So that's where it stands right now. Okay, so I've got this guy epoxied now. I'm sorry, I have it super glued now. We're going to let that cure. And my plan after that is I'm going to take some wires, some thick component leads, and solder them across the brakes here, which will also have the advantage of providing a little bit more stability. And then I'm going to coat the whole thing with some epoxy, top and bottom, along the brake line here. And that way it should be strong enough to weather having batteries inserted. We got to make sure that this isn't going to crack again. I believe it cracked when it was being disassembled. Basically, I did some research and discovered to my relief that there are batteries that I could get for this. They're zinc air batteries. They make some for cameras, some for hearing aids, and I'm going to grab one for here. I just got to make sure the dimensions before I buy one. I may see if I can find some locally for that reason. And when I'm mixing up small batches of epoxy, I save old business cards instead of throwing them out. They're great for just mixing up a small amount for a job like this. So there's your helpful hint for the day. Okay, so I've got this thing epoxied, and when I turn the power supply on, you can see we have a good strong signal. In fact, you can kind of see it modulating from the sound of my voice. Let's see here. Again, this isn't real time, so that's why it doesn't look like it's responding immediately, but it looks like it's working. But what I discovered is I was going to try and hook up a tuner, and the only one I have is a synthesized tuner. You need to be able to use a manual tuner to dial this in exactly where you need it. Now there is an adjustment on here for in case the station it comes set for from the factory has got a station in your area, but it's very touchy, and I've got it on what should be a dead station here. But again, I can't dial it in exactly because I need to use a manual tuner. So I'm gonna have to dig one up and set that up so we can hear what this thing sounds like. Okay, so I do have this thing working, but the acoustic feedback is so bad I can barely turn it up. So I'm gonna stick the microphone inside the headphones I'm wearing, and then you can hear what this thing is doing. Check 1 2, check 1, testing 1 2, check 1 2 3, check 1 2 3, testing 1 2, check 1 2 3. Okay, so yeah, it does work now. It's not the greatest thing I've ever heard, but the acoustic feedback is so bad that I couldn't use speakers. I guess you'd have to be pretty far away in order to make that work. Anyhow, this thing seems to be working. It's not working great. I'm not sure how great it ever worked, and I'm gonna have to see about getting a battery. Those Zinc Air batteries do look promising, so I'm gonna sign this video off now, and as always, I like giving back to the community that's given me so much. Thanks a lot, folks. Well, I got this guy working. It's not really working all that well, and I really don't want to try to disassemble this because the excessive heat possibly damage it, and I believe, just looking through this hole right here, that the problem is the microphone diaphragm. I'm not sure that there's something rattling around in there. Any parts this thing needs are probably going to be unobtainable. Germanium transistors come to mind. I don't know. It's not really worth putting a lot of time into, and it is working. I just don't think it's working all that well. I would like to see what this is down in here. Alright, since I'm one of those idiots that just can't seem to leave well enough alone, I wound up taking it out of the case. It didn't take as much heat as I thought it was going to take to get this out. I did use a soldering gun, which some people don't like to use on electronics, but it's my belief that you're better off using a lot of heat for a short period of time than a little bit of heat for a long period of time. And indeed, it came out pretty quickly. So the first thing I notice is the microphone is broken, its glue bond. So I'm going to use some of this JB Clear Weld. JB Weld makes great products. I usually use the original or traditional product for things like I did on this, but this is really good for just doing a quick job on the microphone. I was going to use hot glue, but I was afraid that when I started to solder it back in the case, it would melt the hot glue and the mic would just start flapping around again. So I'm going to glue this into place, and I'm going to check these transistors and this capacitor because there's really not a lot else on here. I think probably both are good, or all three are good, but they're going to be hard to test because they're germanium and they just look bad. So we'll see what we get. Anyway, I'm going to glue this back in and we'll take it from there. Okay, so I've got that microphone glued into place, and I can't believe it, but it made a huge difference. Not sure why that is. Anyhow, I'm scanning the entire FM band again, and it's appearing a lot lower now. You'll notice when I turn it on, you'll see it pops up down here. Our marker shows that. Okay, let me start over. My stop frequency, 108 megahertz marker. Now, okay. So if we move our marker, we'll see that we are now at about 92.1 or 0.2 megahertz. And it sounds a lot better. I'm going to take you across on the other side of the garage, and you'll hear that music I'm playing. Okay, the music that I'm playing, I picked up the wrong remote. I have a small radio set up on the other side of the garage, so let's go see that. take my lapel mic and put it by here so you can hear this. It sounds a lot better now. Okay, so I'm going to reassemble this, and I'm going to see about getting a battery. There's a zinc air battery made for Nikon cameras that I think is going to work pretty well for this. And let me turn this off. And I'm going to grab one of those and put it all back together, but I'm not going to make another video. I am, however, going to contact the owner and see where the dead radio stations are in his area, and I'll preset it for that before I send it back. Anyhow, folks, I thank everybody for watching this, as always, and I like giving back to the community that gives me so much. Take care and have a great one.